Hello and welcome to the first episode of The Quest for the Best. So let me quickly explain what this is before we properly get into it. People are always asking me what I think of movies. Do I like this movie? Do I hate this movie? What movies do I like? What movies do I dislike? And while I do have the search for the worst to talk about the absolute worst movies I've seen, I don't quite have a platform to express my opinions in a more up-to-date and relevant manner on the good, mediocre or bad. And besides, how are you supposed to appreciate the very worst without occasionally talking about the best as well, sometimes too? So here's how this works. I'll be taking a handful of movies I've seen recently and one movie suggested by the community that people want to hear my thoughts on. Seeing as this is the first episode, I will be choosing the community movie this time, but if you'd like to leave your suggestions in the comments for future community movie ideas, that would be great. Please note that this series is intended to be easier to edit and upload with far less production value than my normal stuff, and it's supposed to be a bit more loose and freeform and discussion focused, just so I can pad out my channel with a little bit more content to tide you over until the full videos. And I also just like documenting the movies that I've seen and what I thought of them. So the films I will be discussing this episode are Hacksaw Ridge, A Monster Calls, T2 Trainspotting, Sully, The Neon Demon, and An American Werewolf in London. The time codes for each one of these movies will be in the description and on screen, and there'll be no spoilers unless stated otherwise. And finally, this video was sponsored by Quid, an app where you can collect and trade officially licensed stickers, cards, and 3D figures from your favorite characters, such as the old Rick and Morty, Firefly, Breaking Bad, and so on. Chances are something you like will be on here. I mean, look, they even have minions that are combined with emojis. And you know how much I love both of those things. You even have a chance at collecting the Golden Freddy if you so desire. It's free to download and you can sign in with Facebook, so it's nice and easy. And as you gradually build up a collection, you can use your stickers in iMessage and whatnot. It's just a bit of silly old fun, isn't it? So if you're into this kind of thing, you can give it a try for free. And the first 24 hours of this video going live, I will be replying to as many people as possible on the message feature on the Quid app. Just simply go to the Find Friends section once you have an account, then search Quid users for IHE, and you should be able to find me. I appreciate that not all of you enjoy being advertised at, but please bear in mind the dire state of YouTube AdSense at the moment, and consider the fact you're about to get an extra free video with lots of content you'll hopefully enjoy. So, starting off then, the first movie is Hacksaw Ridge, the film about the World War II American army medic, played by the old Andrew Garfield, Spider-Man himself, who was a pacifist in World War II, which I know doesn't really make much sense, you know, because World War II was a war, and being a pacifist doesn't really add up with fighting in a war. But he didn't want to fight. The whole point was that he wanted to be a medic. He just wanted to save people and just be a medic on the field while all the fighting was going on around him. The story is the interesting part here. In a lot of ways, the actual story, like the wiki page, is kind of more interesting than the film. I was thinking to myself, do you get more out of watching the film or just actually reading the historical documents about this guy? Because it is incredibly interesting. Because I did some research afterwards about the actual events that occurred around this guy. Desmond T. Doss is the real guy's name, who actually was this pacifist in World War II. Because after watching the movie, I was like, this seems insane. Like, he couldn't have actually done all of this. Some of this must be Hollywood craziness, but it turns out some things that he actually did in reality were cut out of the movie because director Mel Gibson thought it would be too unbelievable, too ridiculous, because he was such a hero. So when it comes down to the actual filmmaking part of it, it's kind of a mixed bag for me. The first sort of third or half of the movie is so unbelievably machismo, Hollywood, like romanticized. Hey, look at me! I'm the really nice guy. I'm the nice American guy who I just bumped into the woman and I'm gonna marry her. You know, that kind of stuff. It's on that level, and I noticed like weird things every now and again. Like, I mean, it looked like really bad green screen. So like, there's a scene where when he's young or something, he's climbing on a mountain, and there was something looked off about it. It looked weird, and the color palette, I think purposefully for the first part, when everything is all almost dreamlike in how cheesy and fairy tale-ish it is colored. It's all colorful and nice. So then when it does eventually hit them going into the army, and fighting in the war. The colour palette does switch to being all greys and browns and smoky and dreary, and it kind of reflects the tone and mood change, but there is something quite jarring about the beginning bit there. The casting of this movie is very strange. I'm not sure how I feel about the old Spider-Man being put in all these films like Silence in this movie. I mean, he's fine, but I just can't take away the fact that he's just Andrew Garfield. There's something about him. I just know the fact that he's just this English boy from England somewhere, and he's doing this weird accent in this movie that I didn't quite buy. And then you have people like Vince Vaughn, who plays he's like a sergeant who's supposed to be intimidating, but again, he's just Vince Vaughn. And then there's another one, there's Sam Worthington. If you don't know who that is, he's the main blue one in Avatar, the main character in Avatar, and the actor is Australian, so he's also doing an accent. So it's kind of all these battling accents going at each other. The film becomes a lot more interesting once the actual direct war stuff happens, like after the training bit's over, after the cheesy intro's over, and they're actually in the war bit, because it's so insanely violent. It's not quite anything we haven't seen before in terms of visceral war stuff, but there's some nice practical effects. It's intense. There's a lot of good action, and if you're sort of squeamish and find particularly violent things difficult to watch, this will not be one for you. Sometimes I do find it hard to watch films like this, like the beginning of Saving Private Ryan type level of stuff, where it's just miserable. That's what the whole latter half of this movie is. There's something I noticed that it's not particularly this movie's fault, because basically everything does it, but it's this trope that's really bugging me now, where it's dream sequences that seem like they're happening until, like the main character gets killed or something, and they wake up suddenly from a bad dream. I get the purpose of them in theory is to kind of convey what the main character is scared of or something like that, but the majority of the time it's used in movies and TV. It's just kind of like a cop-out jump scare, kind of false sense of stakes. I don't know, every time I see it now, it really bugs me, because it's like, well, the last 30 seconds or a couple minutes you just showed me are completely pointless, because it was just none of it happened. I'm sure there are examples of it done right, but they do it in this movie and they do it in a bunch of other movies as well. It's just starting to piss me off. I thought it didn't have much style, it was just sort of a movie. It was relatively flat in a lot of ways, but most importantly, it just didn't quite resonate with me emotionally. Like I'm a sucker for good war movies, like Saving Private Ryan and Schindler's List specifically. I know they're both Spielberg, but they're both excellent war movies. After watching this one, I actually went and watched just the ending scene from Schindler's List with the one more person speech and whatnot, and just that one scene has more emotion, heart, better acting, better writing. It just has more to it over this, where it's just kind of like a Wikipedia page turned into a movie, as opposed to adding style and emotion and a good score. The score is pretty weak in this film. And overall, I think if you're a big fan of war movies, you'll probably enjoy it, but you'll probably you could save a couple hours and just read the wiki page about the guy, because it is admittedly an interesting story. So I would skip this one, to be honest. I really like A Monster Calls, whereas Hacksaw Ridge did not resonate with me very much emotionally. A Monster Calls really did in the end. It's about a little boy whose mum has cancer, like a terminal, and it's just how a little boy is dealing with the fact that he's probably going to lose his mum. It's creative, it's stylish, it has a lot of heart, it's got really good acting all around. If you know anything about it, you've probably seen this tree character voiced by Liam Neeson, and it's so artfully done in terms of the way they mix practical and special effects, and the CG is really good, and they're quite restrained with it. They use it in a nice way, and it's like that thing where there's that quote of George Lucas saying special effects are just a storytelling tool, and that they're meaningless when you just use it for everything. And this is a very good example of a special effect purely just being used for a storytelling tool and not just for pure spectacle. Bear in mind, it is extremely English So if voices like mine bug you, there is a lot of that in this movie, and Sigourney Weaver is in it, who is not English, but she has a bit of a shaky English accent she does, which is one of the only things I found a little bit distracting. But apart from that, she's good in it. It's just the fact that her voice is a bit strange at times. It almost reminds me of a more kid-friendly sort of Pan's Labyrinth type thing, with the way the story's set up, the way everything kind of plays out during the film. But in saying that, though, I don't even know if this is a kid's movie. I wouldn't show this to anyone under 12 or 13, and even then, it's really serious. It has some fucking serious themes. It's extremely dark, but it's not defeatist in its in how dark it is. It does have a moral, an important moral, and if you've ever had anyone you know that's been affected by cancer or anything, I'm sure this will be like a gut punch to you. So it is sad but uplifting, and I would definitely recommend this movie. The first Trainspotting is one of my favourite movies. As far as for a film that has basically no traditional sort of plot, things just kind of happen. Something about it is so stylish, it's so characterful, and everything makes sense. It's just a wonderful film, the first Trainspotting. So I was, of course, really looking forward to Trainspotting 2 because all the characters are so good and whatnot. And I do like Trainspotting 2. It is a good movie, but it's a weird one because it's hard to explain. Because everyone is back, Danny Boyle is back, all the actors are back, but it's kind of like the same movie again, but with them all being older. And I don't even know where the problem comes from, because it has loads of great scenes, like really amazing scenes. It's shot wonderfully. It's full of style. I think it's just a lack of focus. Like there's no specific through line in terms of this is how scenes link together. And while all the scenes individually are quite compelling and somewhat interesting, every now and again you are left just wondering, why is this happening now? How is this going to affect things later? But as far as just a sequel that's true to the first one, it is very true. These are still the same characters, Danny Boyle's back directing, Ewan McGregor, all of them are back. They are the same characters. It is nice to see them again. And there's nothing necessarily bad. I saw Ralph the Movie Maker describe it as pointless on Twitter after he saw it. I'm not sure if I'd quite call it pointless, but I get what he means because it is so similar. The film even references how similar it is to the first one partway through, and it's like, oh, are they gonna do something with that or just acknowledge it? Oh, they're just acknowledging it. Okay. Yeah, so it's a good one. I'd definitely recommend it if you really like the first one, just to sort of see what the characters have been up to, because it is all interesting, and just purely on a stylistic standpoint, the way they play with flashbacks and just monologues and stuff, and the way they show it visually is really interesting if you're into that kind of thing. The cinematography is very good, just the directing is very good, all the acting is very good. And it's just nice to see the characters again. So if the premise, which is just, if you know what happens at the end of the first one, he comes back and just catches up with everyone. That's basically the premise of it. Because like the first one, it doesn't really have a story. And I think that's where it kind of fumbles. Whereas this could have done with a bit more of a, we have this goal to do, we should do that, and things happen around it. I don't know. If you haven't seen the first one, it's basically pointless to see. It doesn't really work on its own. It's completely reliant on you seeing the first movie. So if you're a huge fan of the first one like me, you probably will find some things to get out of it. But just watching it on its own, without any context from the first one, you will be lost. So Sully, Miracle on the Hudson. This was one I was curious about because I thought, well, how are you supposed to make a story, a film, around like an event that was over in about 3 minutes, where it was, if you didn't know, I don't know how you wouldn't know, but it was the story of the pilot who decided when a bunch of, I think it was geese or birds, flew into one of the engines of his plane. It blew one of the engines and he had to do an emergency landing in the Hudson River, which was just insane. I remember when it happened. But what this film more is about is the kind of politics around it, how the companies were like trying to find out, well, actually, maybe you didn't have to land in the Hudson River. Maybe you could have actually made it to a nearby airport or done something else that didn't result in us losing, millions of dollars of a plane. And Tom Hanks is as good as ever. If you want someone to be relatable and kind and instantly likable, he is the guy to do it. He's just good in everything. And Aaron Eckhart as his co-pilot was good also. It's just good performances all round. The only thing is that because there's no direct sort of antagonist sort of role, there is something that does come into play that is which might be unrealistic or unrepresentative because they needed some drama in there. But I think it works in terms of the movie. They turn this small thing into almost like a character study of Tom Hanks's character. Sully is like questioning, what if I could have actually made it somewhere else, or what if I did listen to the people on comms telling me to go and land at an airport, and then I fucked up and crashed into buildings and just killed hundreds of people. It is interesting for an hour and 36-minute movie. It doesn't lag at any point. It's all interesting, and Clint Eastwood does a good job. He was the director, and it seems like a quite a faithful reenactment, an adaptation of what happened. You do get to see the plane landing a few times from a few different angles, and you get to see sort of his imagination of what might have happened if it went wrong. It's not necessarily breaking any grounds in terms of anything creative visually or anything like that. It's all quite by the books. It's just filming what is happening. But I think for what it was trying to achieve, it did succeed, and I would recommend this one if the premise is interesting to you. The Neon Demon. Where to even begin with this one? Apart from saying I did not like this movie at all. It just kind of bugged me. The vague sort of plot is there's this model who's trying to get into the industry, and things happen. On IMDb it says, her youth and vitality are devoured by a group of beautifully obsessed women who will take any means necessary to get what she has. An interesting premise, but Nicholas Winding Refn, who's the director, he's just so weird. I know some people do quite enjoy this weird, experimental, unconventional type of storytelling where things just kind of happen, like crazy things start happening at one point. It's like, I remember the end of it and I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? But there aren't really any characters you care about. I don't really remember any dialogue that I really enjoyed. Visually, it's good, but just being visually interesting isn't really enough when you could find something that has that as well as good characters and a good story. It's something that I feel like would be far more interesting if it was told in a more conventional way. Like, the modeling industry is inherently interesting in how fucking dark and fucked up it is, so someone else could have done a much more interesting job, like what was done with, Black Swan, The Wrestler, which is more kind of a character study, whereas this is a dunno study, a fucking weird study. Keanu Reeves shows up randomly. He's not very good. And then the movie ends, and you're left saying, okay, I don't really get what the point of that was particularly. Well, I do get the point, but I didn't get much out of it. For a horror thriller, I wasn't particularly scared, and I wasn't particularly thrilled either. There are parts of it which stand out, but for a 2-hour movie, I can't recommend it. Unless you really are interested by the concept, or purely just want to look at, the lighting and the colour palette and everything, which is well done, but it's just not enough. It just didn't work for me. So, to end this, we have the classic 80s comedy horror, An American Werewolf in London. I suppose by now my childhood trauma video that YMS tagged me in will not be up yet, but I have a feeling this movie will show up in it, because I used to obsess over this movie when I was quite young. I had it on VHS, videotape, if you don't know what that is, if you're too young, and I thought it was really scary when I was young. And I haven't seen it in quite a long time, so it was interesting to watch it with a different eye now. Director John Landis, who directed the Thriller music video, Michael Jackson, very good. And I'm sad to say I don't really like this film that much anymore. Everyone talks about the effects. When it finally gets to the werewolf transformation scene, it was revolutionary in terms of visual effects, because it is really good. It's amazing for practical effects with a bit of stop motion in there. It looks amazing. But that's kind of the only memorable thing about the movie. That and the odd funny bit, which I don't remember from when I was young. The main character is this American guy. He's got a friend, and they're hitchhiking at the beginning. And the friend character, what happens to him, I thought was quite funny and well done. But as far as like the structure of a film goes, the characters aren't interesting. Like there's like a nurse in it and stuff. It's just quite strange, and the film just kind of ends. It doesn't like know how to wrap itself up properly, so it just kind of ends. It really is a mixed bag for me, because I remember really loving it. But when I think about the other films I watched from the 80s in the same vein, Terminator, Aliens, and whatnot, I much prefer those films. They hold up much better than something like this, where it has dated a little bit, I think is what it is. It has the problem where none of the characters really feel like characters. They just feel like dolls that have just been programmed to kind of say lines that have been written for them. They don't really feel like people, which really bugs me in movies, and I really can't get past it. If that happens in your film, I'm just not going to be able to really connect with it. So I found parts of it quite dull up until the points where the werewolf is doing stuff. It has its moments. I wouldn't say it's terrible or anything, but as far as a full package of a movie is concerned, it's quite a mixed bag. I know a lot of people have nostalgia for it and might be annoyed with me saying this, but go and watch it again and get back to me, because like, it's okay. I think you should see it for the practical effects and how good they are, but that's about it, to be honest. So those are my thoughts on those movies. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Make sure you leave suggestions for community movie you'd like me to talk about next. I'll be doing these once or twice a month, so don't worry, they're not going to fucking come out every day or anything. And many thanks to Quid for sponsoring the video. Remember, the download is in the description, and I will be answering questions on there, so make sure you go download that, and I'll be answering them for 24 hours. Hopefully you enjoyed. Leave your feedback below. I'll see you on the next video, whatever the hell it is. Bye!